Hi everyone, it's Atuksha from Simple Crowdfunding, and today I'm here with Tim Hawkins from Joulium Energy to talk about his business. Tim, thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure.
The first thing is, can I just briefly ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Okay. Yes, I'm Tim Hawkins, as Atuksha said. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Joulium Energy Limited. Very briefly, my background is 30 years in investment banking, so I'm reasonably grounded in terms of finance and managing and running businesses and risk. My involvement in the energy space has really been started off as an investor myself, looking at projects, to invest my own money in. And then I was, broadly speaking, introduced to the guys who are the co-founders of Joulium Energy, talking about the opportunity, the technology that they had, that they were working on, and was I able to help and join? And as a long story short, Joulium Energy was born some 4 years ago.
That's wonderful. So can you tell me a bit about Joulium Energy?
Sure. There are a couple of sort of quite startling statistics that really got my attention when I first started looking at this. And the first one is that 70% of all the energy produced by mankind is thrown away in the form of waste heat. Now, that is a colossal resource just being vented to atmosphere and thrown away, and not used. And we've got some statistics about the very tiny amounts of waste heat that are being consumed in this sector. And secondly, global electricity demand is forecast to rise anything between 50 and 100% from current levels, depending on which study you read, by 2050. Now, the world currently consumes about 30,000 terawatt hours, of power every day of every year. So that's a colossal increase. Now, if we're throwing all this energy away, surely we should be able to do something better with it. And really, Joulium Energy was formed out of a desire to be able to take this free, wasted resource and turn that into something useful, i.e. electricity. I'm sure we will discuss later the issues that are facing the power market, not only in the UK, but Europe and globally. Some very real problems, happening right now. And unfortunately, those look like a template as to perhaps where Western Europe is heading in the not too distant future. And really, we wanted to try and solve that, and also, we quite handily tick a bunch of UN sustainability goals along the way, of which accessible, cheap power is one of those UN sustainability goals.
So in terms of your technology, it's patented technology, isn't it?
Applied for, yep.
And how is it different from others in the marketplace?
The essential difference is efficiency. Now, we operate on something called the organic ranking cycle, which is well documented. It's essentially heating up or applying heat to an organic fluid which boils at a lower temperature. And I'm not an engineer. The smart guys, the engineers, the chemists have developed something that is considerably more efficient than anything else that's available. And when you set out to design one of these fluids, there are a bunch of criteria that you want to tick in terms of it needs to be kind to the environment. It needs to have a high degree of efficiency. It needs to be able to be heated up and cooled down in repeated cycles, over thousands and thousands of operating hours. And it needs to be able to continue to repeat that. So that's just a very small scratching of the surface of the examples of a long list of criteria that we've ticked. And we believe, or we know, all our research indicates, and we've got some fairly heavy hitting partners who work alongside us, that we have ticked all these boxes, and we're doing it better than anybody else in the market. And that's essentially our USP is our efficiency. And with efficiency, basically that means we can take more energy per unit of heat out and create more electricity. That leads to shorter payback times, leads to more power, and ultimately, from a consumer point of view, that's going to lead to better energy prices.
And there's something about the level of heat as well, isn't there? Because you can convert at lower temperatures, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I can't get too much into the details of the fluid for IP reasons, but the temperatures that our operating window comes down to quite low temperatures in terms of, and still to be operate at maximum efficiency.
And that basically allows for you to be able to access more waste heat sites for conversion.
Yes, so we can take heat from anything from, glass, steel plants operating at 1500, 2000 degrees, all the way down to high double digits. Obviously, we then start to get into, there's an efficiency sort of tail off, but our operating window is pretty versatile to be able to still generate the requisite pressure that we need for our equipment to operate at its efficient level.
Thank you. And you mentioned you're not the engineers, the chemists. Can you tell me a little bit about your team?
Yeah, sure. The team we're a very small team because we're a very small company. So we have, in terms of in-house, the co-founders, there are 2 engineers, a mechanical engineer and a chemist or a chemical engineer, both who have got, the mechanical guys have got 35, 40 years of experience, and the chemists 50 years plus of experience, or the chemist. So, between us, and I've got 30, 35 years in commerce, we're pretty deep in terms of experience, but we're pretty small in terms of numbers. Now, that allows us maximum flexibility in terms of making decisions, in terms of simplifying things, not making it too complicated, having to call board meetings, and that it's a very, very easy structure for us to operate in. It's made us very flexible. We've had to be able to take some decisions quickly, and we have that. Now, we also have a firm of consulting engineers, who's a company called Arup, and Arup are a huge multi-billion dollar multinational engineering company based in the UK, and they provide us with engineering support. They were our validation engineers for our testing that we did. Just give you a little bit of flavour about that. When we developed this, and we had the sort of light bulb moment that we were getting the dials and the gauges were moving in the way that they did, to illustrate that we'd actually got what we proved and what we thought we were going to prove. We engaged Arup independently. Bear in mind, is, like I said, a huge multinational, to do the verification, to design the test, to run some tests independently, and to prove or disprove what we were claiming. And essentially they said, "Yeah, well done. You've kind of reinvented the wheel. Now what are you going to do with it?" So here we are today.
Very exciting. And we know about it, Simple know about it, because actually we've been helping you raise funds for your business actually for the last 3 years, 3+ years.
Yeah.
And we're talking about it now because we've reached a milestone. We've raised over $1 million for your business, which is wonderful. Why did you bring it to crowd? Why have you brought this opportunity to crowd?
I think, given my background in banking and finance and risk, and understanding the various sources of finance around in the market, from simple bank finance to, all the way through to equity finance, to venture capital, and other sort of forms of investment capital. The world in 2021 was going through quite a hiatus in terms of risk appetite. And what crowd enables not just us, but anyone to do is to effectively syndicate that risk that a pre-money company has, and it allows investors to participate in something at generous returns because of the risk, and it allows them to benefit from that, but it also allows them to participate in a size that they're comfortable with. And obviously from a crowd point of view, the clue of being in the title, we put all those small pieces together and we end up with a much bigger piece. And that has enabled us from a risk point of view to make the company and take it forward. But from an investor point of view, it's individual investors themselves are not highly exposed to the whole piece of the company and the money that we've raised. So it's been an extremely successful medium, not just for us, but as in general. It is an extremely successful medium for being able to offer risk out to a broad spectrum of people, and everybody can take a little bit, but the company ultimately benefits from all of those little pieces, all of those little crumbs coming together to make the big cake. And it's been incredibly successful for us. And I write to our investors quite regularly, and we're incredibly grateful to our investors. They are probably our single, apart from the actual assets of the company, I would say they're probably our single most important asset, because they've been able to bring us to the point where we are at today.
And they're also investing in something that potentially resonates with them. And the fact that crowd allows you to sort of back what you believe in is quite a nice place to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and those investors can come from anywhere. I know we have a number of investors who've invested using their ISA into your business, and they're receiving tax-free returns, aren't they?
Indeed, yes. And that's, and rightly so. If you're going to take, it's taking that risk, there should be some additional compensations, which, rightly the if ISA innovative finance, and this is an innovative product, so the two sit, quite neatly together.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about where this business is going and the future. So if we start with, what are your predictions with regards to the energy market in both the UK and potentially overseas for the mid and long term, and then also considering sort of in the UK government changes? Yeah,
I think from a kind of macro point of view, you've now got some sort of slightly opposing forces, if you like. So you've got global electricity demand forecast to increase by anything up to 100%, pulling on one end. You've got regulation, net zero, decarbonisation of the grid, quite rightly pulling the other way. But unfortunately, the power market is caught in the middle. And that's the bit that's been stretched. And government policy and regulation need to work in a smart way, in a way that countries, if you like, if you want to put it as a macro issue, are not completely disadvantaged. Yes, we absolutely need to get to net zero, but we also have to be able to not have rolling blackouts. Now, government policy, for example, New Zealand, So they stopped all oil and gas exploration. They put a lot of emphasis on hydro. The winter just gone, hydro, they had a very dry winter, so hydro was a problem. And because of the change in the licensing for gas, there wasn't enough pressure in the gas pipes to make, to burn, to produce electricity. So they've had, at times, power prices, consumers have been receiving power bills 10 times what they were previous to this. And that's because of a well-meant desire from government policy to get to a goal without actually thinking of the unintended consequences of that. My fear is that the UK is going the same way. Government has announced changes to oil and gas exploration. We are importing more electricity from Europe than we have ever. We are taking three or four more of the remaining nuclear power stations offline in the next 2 years, which provide 15% or so of our electricity. And we're reliant on the whims of Mother Nature, being solar and wind. We came very close to having to implement blackouts a few weeks ago when wind production was very low. And we have to be, what is not being considered are the multiples of renewable energy production that you need versus a unit of conventional, and also the slightly intractable problem of power storage. Battery storage is inordinately expensive. Yes, there will be other technology coming, but it is frighteningly expensive, and it's still a long way away. And 2030 is not very far away, and 2050 is not very far away either. I mean, it's only sort of, we're halfway to it from the millennium. I mean, we can all remember what we did on the millennium. So I'm concerned that policy is getting ahead of technology, and that's going to be a bad outcome for everybody, for industry, for consumers, for anybody that you can think of. And I think with all this wasted heat and resource that we have, hope we can turn around something very, very quickly. We're going to come on to the development, first customers, where we are now as of today. We are kind of shovel ready to go. So we can begin to contribute to this issue. And when you've got thousands of terawatt hours of waste heat, which is basically raw fuel for us, waiting to be used, we can make an immediate difference.
And the cost of the waste heat for you is zero, isn't it? Because it is waste heat.
Correct.
And so on that basis, the market conditions, it sounds like that's actually creating an opportunity for a company like Joulium. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think the waste heat market. I think of the waste heat market and this electricity market a bit like the electric car market. Obviously we are vehemently defending our IP, but there is so much extra power to generate, and there's so much waste heat. Is there only room for one electric car company? Is there only one room for one any electricity generating company? Clearly not. Clearly there are opportunities, because the market is absolutely vast. And we're not only talking about the UK, we're talking about Western Europe, and we've got a lot of things being developed in other jurisdictions as far as the Middle East and India. So the global opportunity is huge. Western Europe, given the structure of the power market, is an obvious choice, and it's also our home market. But the other thing we need to consider is the desire for decarbonisation, which is not just a particularly a UK problem. So if you are a large hydrocarbon business, whatever that may be, and whoever you may be, you may not have an issue with electricity prices, but you've got a carbon problem. and an offset problem. And we obviously generating renewable power from heat generate carbon credits. So that is a huge bonus to us, not for just people who need power and need to mitigate their power supply and price, but also those who need to mitigate their carbon footprint.
Got it. So what would you say are the threats and opportunities for Joulium?
Okay, I mean, I think that the threats probably fall into 4 or 5 categories. So I think you've got the size of the market, which I think we just covered, and is there room for somebody else? Yes, I think that is very much true. I think probably the two largest single risks for us are the power market structure.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll deal with these individually. We've got IP is probably the second one. In terms of threats to our patent, to our intellectual property and our technology. Regulation is right up there, and I think at a micro level, given that we are a nascent company expanding, it's the pace of expansion and being able to hire the right people into the company. So the size of the market we've already dealt with. The power market structure, I mean, our business model is based on a minimum grid in feed tariff in the UK. And that's not taking advantage of any spikes in power or any power purchase agreement levels or anything like that. Now, our pay for a standard operating hours of 8,000 hours a year, the payback, bear in mind we own our own equipment, the payback is just about 1.75 years. Mm-hmm. So if the power price halved again from grid in-feed, we're not talking about export levels, we're talking about in-feed levels. So if the in-feed tariff was cut in half, our payback time goes up to about 3.5 years, which is still at the low conservative end of any standard capital payback model that any business would look at. So I think we're on, reasonably safe ground there because we've kind of future-proofed that. The IP thing is an interesting one because, I think that once we get notice, people are going to have a look. I think it's possibly more likely we might get bought before we get challenged by, people wanting to infringe patents. And big companies traditionally don't like to infringe patents, but we will defend that IP. But we're also not standing still. So our chemists have still got their white coats on. They're still working. They're still developing new. So we're constantly. The patent is a work in progress, if you like. It's evolving. It's okay. We can now do this better. We've now got a slightly different formulation. We've now got a slightly new level of efficiency. So we're not standing still. So that's I think is probably about as far as we can go with that at the moment.
And
regulation is an interesting. Sorry.
We've seen that actually, because from when you first started, the technology's developed quite substantially, hasn't it? So that's just in the last 3 years. Yeah,
we've managed to squeeze a few more percentage points out of our overall efficiency, thanks to some clever work by the engineers. And there is more to come. Bear in mind the first full scale one is imminent, which is a large part of the reason why we're talking. So I think that we can continue to evolve. It's not exactly a law of diminishing returns, but it's not an exponential curve anymore. We will, but if there are other efficiencies to be had once you're running a full scale installation, we can then start to play around with other things, not just the fluid, but how the system operates. So we've got a list of. The engineers have got a list of things in mind that they're going to play around with that are hopefully going to elicit a little bit more. And ultimately, it's all about kilowatts and megawatts of power. But just rinsing as much as we can out of the energy that's available. In terms of regulation, there are, just to put it into perspective, how big is the current power market from waste heat, or the organic ranking cycle market? So the latest data we had when we started this, that there was, as I was saying to you, there's thousands of terawatt hours of heat being thrown away every day. The latest data that we had there was 2.7 terawatts, or 2,700 gigawatts of power being generated from organic ranking cycle, just to put it in its broadest terms. However, 75% of that power was coming from geothermal, which is technically not waste heat. We're only talking about waste heat, the stuff that comes out, from industrial processes. So, when we say we're going to disrupt the market, there isn't really a market to disrupt. It's almost virgin territory. It's very, it's just the surface is being scratched. So hence, what I was saying about, there are room for other operators. Clearly, we have got a very big first mover advantage with this technology, and we intend to exploit that. But in terms of regulation, some of the stuff that's been used up until now, or is in use now, is not very environmentally friendly. Some of it's actually dangerously explosive, so you need a fire suppressant system or a container system,
Right.
if you're operating one of these things. We don't need any of that. So we're not flammable, not combustible. We are officially rated at 0 for ozone depletion and negligible for global warming. So if we spill any, or there's a leak, then there's no damage to the environment, and we don't need a fire suppression system or any special, And those are just some of the things that our chemists have looked at and gone, well, back to the list of designing the ideal fluid, we need to tick these boxes, and we've already ticked them. So we think that we are, pretty good from a regulatory point of view, because there's nothing worse than if a regulator comes along and says stop, you've got no choice, you have to stop. So what we're trying to do is lead the charge, and hopefully that will be to our benefit. In terms of personnel, we know that we've got an expansion plan, and we know that we are going to require some people. Now, we've got the might of Arup standing behind us. Arup are going to be a shareholder in Joulium Energy. I think that's important to discuss. So that's how much a global multinational believes in this business, that they are prepared to back us. But in terms of the internals, we are going to need more engineers. We're going to need more staff, more specialist people, and we've already started to compile a Rolodex of folks we'd like to speak to, and folks we've actually already had some conversations with in some cases about the future and potential opportunities with us. But like anything else, we need to put the horse in front of the cart, and grow accordingly, organically, and not get too far ahead of ourselves.
But the fact that you're thinking about the expansion of the business is definitely positive. So let me ask you, what are your long-term goals for Joulium Energy? Okay,
so it's been it has been a fascinating journey, and we're literally, we've herded, almost an analogy of herded everything right into the corner. So we've got our technology, we've got our IP in progress. We now have a first customer lined up, and that's no small undertaking for someone to say, okay, we're the first, we know it works, but I'm going to let you be the first to touch any commercial installation. And, by the way, don't destroy it. So, that's a huge undertaking for this customer to be willing to let us do that. That should not be underestimated. And that's part of the hand in hand with, we have had a lot of conversations with a lot of customers and a lot of shall we say, heat source manufacturers, to give it its broadest sense. Because if you look at our business model, we've broken it down into target areas, and there are thousands of opportunities, and I mean that. I'm not just saying that there are genuinely. I can point to thousands of opportunities that we have. But the question is always, so where can I go and see one?
Yeah.
Well, guess it's subject to getting this, done and off the ground. Well, we're going to be able to take you there. We're going to have our own private showroom, because part of the deal with the first customer is to say, look, we want to bring customers in and use them, and that's no problem. We want to show this off. So, go down to the local showroom and see it for yourself. And that's exactly what prospective customers are going to be able to do. And then once you get to that critical mass of, you get to multiple installations, then that process becomes a lot easier. And we're not just talking about small, sort of up to a megawatt installation. We're talking about solving problems in lots of jurisdictions for people who've got carbon problems and also have got waste heat problems. So there are some jurisdictions who are looking to align themselves with better regulation. So to align themselves perhaps with EU and UK regulation. And they're producing enormous quantities of waste heat, which they literally vent into atmosphere. And they want to clean that up. And we are in discussions about helping those folks, and reasonably advanced discussions. But again, it all comes back to project number one, getting that built. We've done all the testing. We've worked with Arup. We've done everything as I said that we've done. It's now about just putting the first one in, refining it, optimizing it, ticking the box, and then the sky is the limit. That's the getting this technology out to as many places as possible in the shortest sensible available time is ultimately the goal, because I think we do believe there could be quite a strong upward march of power prices, in Western Europe and globally, and that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. So this will provide not only a different source of electricity, it's helping to reduce carbon footprints for some, and utilising, in essence, a waste product. So your input costs are relatively low at that point. What's
quite amusing in a way, but startling, really is probably the right word, is that if you're in a regulated jurisdiction in Western Europe, and the US and other sort of developed countries, you can't just vent heat at 1500 degrees, 500 degrees, whatever, to atmosphere. You actually have to cool that down. So you have to spend more electricity, use more, consume more power to cool something so you can waste it than you could if you just sent it to us and we say, well, fine, we'll take the waste heat and we'll give you power back. We'll either export it to the grid or we'll give it to you on site for your on-site needs. It's the more you think about it, it's just a simply a common sense approach to something that's we're spending money on and more energy to get rid of, without thinking about how it could be used more efficiently.
And so, in terms of the opportunity, would it be fair to say that the opportunity is just mammoth for a business like yours in this space at the moment?
I think the biggest headache or worry that I have is actually a capacity constraint. We've got a number of people who are willing to open their Rolodexes to us, and I think that we're going to have to manage this process very carefully. One of the things that we are currently doing is looking for additional capacity, manufacturing capacity, to be able to produce these at the similar sort of prices. Now that's not a straightforward undertaking, but we've got headroom in terms of time with our current operation to account for certainly years 1 and 2, most of year 3. Bear in mind, we're now talking about 3 years down the line. So sourcing that production within that timescale shouldn't be too difficult. And we're getting some help from Arup on that. It's one of the things that we've asked them to look at. And they've been pretty relaxed about it. So but that's potentially the biggest headache that we face. Once we're up and running.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's been enlightening, and actually having seen Joulium develop over the last few years since we've been working together, it has been wonderful. Your raise is still open on platform, and there will be a link to the raise in the text at the bottom, so have a look for sure. And if you've got any questions at all, then please reach out to us. Either the Simple team will help to answer those questions if it's something that we can't do. Tim, you're happy to address any questions as well, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
no
perfect.
problem.
Thank you so much. I really, really do appreciate your time, Tim. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much.